Hello again, and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm talking to Sara Corlis today, and I primarily wanted to speak to her because she has recently come back from Antarctica, and that is a place that I would love to visit. However, as always with these, Sara has a much bigger story than that, and it was really lovely to hear that unfold. Now, before we get into the recording, I'll just say I had a little bit of trouble with my end with my internet. So towards the beginning, Sara cuts out a little bit and then again right at the end. So I apologize for that. So without any further ado, let me hand over to myself and Sara. Okay, so welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Sara Corlis, and Sara and I met briefly on a few occasions in Sydney through photography groups. So I was with you, we were observers, and Sara, you're with a photography club, aren't you? So
yes,
what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to you. So you can take this anywhere you want to go. But basically, what I've asked Sara to do is just to talk to us about what she's doing right now, how she got started, the kind of photography that you like to do. And then the big one from me that I really want to cover is your trip to Antarctica, because I'd love to go, but we'll work up to that. So maybe you'd like to tell us what you're doing right now and how you got into photography.
Hi, Graham. Thank you so much for having me. This is my very first podcast, so I'm a little bit nervous and I do talk a lot, so we'll see how we go. I am a nature and wildlife photographer. I have been photographing off and on for 20, 25 years. I am one of these people that have always had a camera in my hand. Even when I was younger and sillier with all my friends, I was the one that was always behind the camera. I am much more comfortable behind the camera than I am in front of the camera. And I was always the one taking snapshots. And I did that for many, many years. And then in about 2005, I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. And that sort of sent my world into a great big tiz, and made it through the other end after surgeries and chemos and that sort of thing. And then I discovered that I had this urge that I just needed to see the world. So camera in hand, I started visiting all these countries. And initially I was a travel photographer, snapping away. And very soon I realised that I had such a love of nature. I've always grown up with nature. We've always had animals at home. My earliest recollection of nature loving was when I was about 3 or 4. I had a little Christmas beetle in the backyard, and a spider had wrapped its web tightly around this beetle. I remember sitting in the yard, picking every single piece of web off the beetle and saving it. So I've always been an advocate for nature, and that sort of led me to here, where I now spend a great deal of my time. I travel overseas a little bit, and that leads me maybe to what you wanted to talk about, and my latest trip to Antarctica.
Yeah.
So this is my third. So at Christmas time, I went down to Antarctica. It was my third time down in that region, and it was my second time actually putting feet onto that final. What is it? It's not a country. It's
A continent.
Yeah, a continent. Thank you. So that was my So I've been to all 7 continents now.
Oh, wow.
And so when I went to Antarctica, I had this. I sort of set myself a few goals where I wanted to focus on textures. I wanted to focus on animals and their behaviours and how they interact with each other. And I love the idea that animals make eye contact with you. So I think that there's a fantastic connection in photography when an animal looks at you. That it's just a beautiful thing. So textures, landscape, all the creatures down there. So that was my latest trip down there with my big camera, and we were on a tiny 80-foot vessel traveling around in the high seas.
Wow. Where did you, so you started from South America, you would have picked up that ship in South America?
No, so I flew into Punta Arenas.
Okay.
And from Punta Arenas, I met up with the group of people that I was photographing with. We flew from Punta Arenas in a small plane down and actually landed on King George Island. And we actually landed on Antarctica. And from there, we got on this small vessel, and we travelled through the Antarctic waters. So I skipped all the scary Drake Passage on the way down.
That's the part that doesn't appeal to me very much, I must say.
So I did.
Yeah. And so what sort of preparation did you do before you went?
This was actually my second time actually landing there. I had a fair idea about what the conditions were going to be like. And when it comes to Antarctica, it can be sunny one moment and blustery and snowy the next. So you just don't know. You don't know what to expect. So I pack for everything, and I often pack too much. So I always make sure that I've got myself covered insofar as warm, waterproof and weatherproof clothing. My camera gear, I usually carry a raincoat with that as well. The preparation this time was a little bit, I wanted to take a tripod and a monopod, and I wanted to go on land and really take my time photographing the creatures this time. But when we got down there, we weren't able to take the monopods and the tripods on land because there's a bird flu in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment, and they're concerned that it may make it down to Antarctica this season. So I couldn't take any of those on land. And as you know, when you're photographing a creature, you want to get down really low and try to be eye level as much as you can. And these little knees, you have to get up and down. So that was a bit tricky. I didn't do any exercises to get there, but yeah. So it's kind of winging it a little bit because you don't know what you're going to see until you actually get on shore. I put everything on in my backpack. Some places will have wet landings where you actually flip your legs over the Zodiac, then you step down into the water. So you can imagine that you want to keep all your camera gear dry, you want to keep yourself dry. Some of the areas are really rocky when you step in there, so it's there's these slip hazards. They give you boots when you go down there, so you've got these big cumbersome sort of heavy boots that you wear, which does help a little bit.
Okay. What about things like those walking pole things, anything like that? Do you take anything like that to support you when you're maybe getting off the boat, or are there enough people to help you? And I guess it's a case of just being careful when you're getting off the boat.
It's interesting because the people that work on these ships, they seem to make the unloading and loading of passengers super easy. They just shoot themselves off and they stand there in all sorts of conditions, and to the untrained, you're a little bit nervous about getting on and off. I didn't take poles with me. I was suspecting that I was going to use my tripod if I needed to. I'm a big believer that I use my tripod to get up and down. But no, they're always so super helpful getting on and off Zodiacs.
Oh, that's great. And talking about the camera gear, so anyone who's interested in what gear you're using, what camera gear are you using at the moment?
I've got a Canon. I've got the mirrorless R5, and I've had that for just over a year. And I chose that specifically because I can make the shutter silent. And for me, I do a lot of bird photography and just a sidewards thing. So when I'm out and about in bushland or close to home here in the wetlands, it's just standing still, I can actually take a series of photos and there's absolute silence. Where my last camera, a Canon 5D Mark IV, which I still have and love, but you see that little creature, that bird, something sitting on the branch, click, and all of a sudden they go, oh, is that you? And they take off. So I really like to be anonymous when I'm out and about. So I've got a Canon R5. I have a 100 to 500 lens that goes on the end of that. I was using my 100 to 400 with the adapter, and I thought that was going to be okay. But I found that for the type of photography I do, the fast bursts of birds in flight and true nature photography, there was just a beat of maybe a second or so that it just didn't keep up with the new technology. Yeah. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to that. So the 100 to 500, I've just recently bought a 1.4 extender to go on that. So that makes it about a 700 mil length zoom that I have.
Right. How much light do you lose do you lose a stop or two when you put the 1.4 extender on? So that'll down shutter speed, obviously.
It is a little bit. I noticed that my f-stop does go up a little bit. It sort of sits on about f10. And so that doesn't blur the background as much. But when you are doing bird photography and down here in Antarctica, often the animals are a little bit away from the background, so you still get that lovely diffuse, that distance diffuses the background enough. And I don't really notice it that much.
Okay. And do you tend to shoot on a tripod when you're photographing birds?
So if I go out and about and I'm just going out for the morning, I try to put a little backpack on, and so preparation when I'm back home is a little bit different to being in Antarctica. I'm a big believer in making sure that I've got something to eat and something to drink. I carry a tiny little chair that weighs 200 grams and it fits into my backpack. Oh, wow. And that chair works really well because if I'm at a stakeout kind of thing, and I'll sit for 4 hours waiting for something to happen on the side of a creek or a pond, I can actually put that chair out and my elbows will rest on my knees and I can hold my camera quite well for a long period of time. Right. So when I go out back home in Sydney, I will have everything in my backpack. I have the spare batteries. As you can imagine, the R5, it just 20 frames a second, and I'm looking for something. I'm looking for personality. I'm looking for some sort of interaction, I'm always looking for something that's never been seen before, with these creatures. So always make sure. I use CF Express cards as well. I think that they... my camera's got the ability to do that. I don't worry about putting in two cards, SD cards or anything. One card's enough for me. So I pack a bag. And so getting back to the tripod thing, I just will put the camera over my shoulder and I go. But just recently I have bought a gimbal ball head for my to do birds in flight. I'm still learning how to use it, to track the birds. Yeah. I'm not comfortable with it yet. Yeah. So it's been in my boot for a little while and it comes out every now and then. But every time I go out, I feel like I'm going to get the shot and it's going to be the best time ever. So I never want to... I never want to miss out on getting the good shot. So sometimes I just leave it in the car.
I was sharing some photographs in a webinar a few weeks ago and I got some video of a tiger when I was in India. And it was in the bushes and it was coming out. And I was saying to people, you'll never know how much self-control it took for me to carry on filming video while this tiger was walking out. Because if he gives me the look, and it's on video and not on still, I'm going to be so disappointed. So I know exactly what you mean. Because, yeah, you want to be ready to go and just, get that shot.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I was at Centennial Park the other day, and that's in Sydney, and my goal has been to get at least 3 tawny frogmouths in a row on a branch. Yeah. And a good friend of mine put something up online and said there's 4 in a row, and oh my goodness, I couldn't get dressed fast enough to get there. And I was there. I got there at about 2:30, and I stayed till sundown. And even though I love photographing, I've got this approach that I just want to watch them. I just have such an appreciation for, well, one, these beautiful creatures are right in the middle of Sydney, but they are just so beautiful, and people walk past them and don't even know they exist. So I was there for a really long time, and I have never before videoed. And I thought, I'm going to just do a tiny bit of video. So a few goes at the video. Tawnies, they sleep all day. There's an occasional yawn. And at one stage I pressed record, and just on cue, one yawned, the other one yawned. They stretched out their wings, yawned right at the camera, and I got it on video. And I thought later, I didn't photograph that. And it's that bit of fear of missing out on the shot.
Yeah, because you don't get a second chance off when it happens and it's gone. And that's amazing. I was also thinking while you were talking, I mean, it sounds like you've had a lot of adventures, let's say, with photography. What stands out for you? Obviously, Antarctica was the one that sort of got my attention, but that might not for you be the biggest trip. What was the sort of best experience, or the one you look back on most fondly for whatever reason?
I think because I used to just trek along on, and I won't mention any companies, but I used to just go along with different companies, and I'd be going through Europe or going through Asia, and I was always the one at the back photographing something, and out of the corner of my eye I'd be watching to see where they are. And this was when I more or less did more travel photography than I did nature and wildlife and landscapes. And I was always watching to see, yes, that's where they are. They've gone around that corner. And so I sort of stayed with them quite a lot. And then in about 2015 or 2016, I discovered that there was such a thing as photography trips overseas. And my first big one was to Kenya. And I remember landing in Kenya, and so I had my 5D, and I just bought my 100 to 400, and we landed on this small airfield, dust. And as we were coming in, there were zebras and there's gazelles and everyone's underneath. The minute we landed, we got in our little trucks and we started, everyone started photographing. I didn't even know how I had no idea how to focus on an eye or anything like that. I'd taken photographs of my cat and my dog. I hadn't really done too much nature. And I just remember getting the camera ready and getting the lens. And then the person who was leading the trip, he just looked up behind and he just moved my hands and showed me how to even hold the camera with the lens. I had no idea. Yeah. And within 15 minutes of landing, we'd seen a leopard and we've seen all these other creatures. I didn't get really good shots then, but and I look back at those and I think they were very much portrait. I just had to get the eye in focus, and I learned so much in those 2 weeks. I saw the crossing of the wildebeest crossing from Tanzania, the migration, in the Masai Mara. I think that was the trip for me that went, wow, and I mean, I could get quite teary thinking about it. The trip that, wow, there's a great big world out there. And I was in, back then I was just shocked. I was in cars that didn't have sides and didn't have doors and didn't have windows. And we were traipsing across fields because there was a cheetah on a rock. And giraffe silhouettes. And Africa changed me. I went back again a few years after that with the same person, and did Namibia and then Botswana. But I think Kenya for me was this iconic, wow, these creatures, they're not just in a zoo.
No.
And yeah, and look, I've always loved animals, but I wanted to get them, I wanted to learn more about how to photograph them. I wanted to give them personalities, want them. The first time round, no, I was just so busy just trying to get them in focus. But I think Kenya, I would, if someone gave me a ticket, I'd go tomorrow.
That part of Africa is just amazing. Yeah. My recommendation to people, if they're going to do a trip like that, is to practice at home. Birds are a good one to practice on because they might be sat still in a tree, but then they'll move again. It just gets you used to using the camera, knowing what settings to start with, and just getting that fumbling out of the way somewhere where it doesn't really matter. Because once you're in somewhere like that, particularly if you've not been to Kenya, Antarctica, wherever it might be, it can be very overwhelming. And so you want the camera part of it to be pretty much second nature, so you're not having to think about that as well as everything else that you're thinking about. So that's what I don't know if you've got any tips for anybody who might be considering a trip like that, how they get themselves ready for it.
I think exactly what you said. I think me of 8-9 years ago, I would have said, learn as much as you can. So within those 2 weeks that I was there, I could change all my dials and buttons and move my thumbs and fingers without actually taking my eye away from the eyepiece. And I just was blown away by my ability to do that muscle memory. And I think that if anyone was going to think about doing anything like that, sit at home, as you say, just practice with your buttons, go and find some birds on branches. Another one is people say to go and photograph surfers because they're moving as well. So photograph surfers. So,
or even cars. There are cars around, so you can play with shutter speed. If you want to get things in motion, you can play with backgrounds, get them out of focus. I think once you start thinking about what's around you, and this is really for everyone, and it's like you were saying earlier, people walk past birds that are beautiful, but they just walk past them because they're not thinking, they're not really looking at what's there. Whereas when you go somewhere new, you are looking. So I think taking that exercise of almost doing a visual portrait or a diary of where you live makes you start looking and makes you start experimenting with different ways of using the camera and different formats, playing with depth of field, all those sorts of things that I think stand you in really good stead when you go somewhere where you may not ever go there again.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that I went quite clueless, and thankfully I was with a fantastic photography leader who super patient, and I learned so much. But I didn't look at YouTube. I didn't do my homework, and I think regrettably that was one thing I wish I had have done. And even when we're sitting around at night time in Kenya, people were saying, "Oh, so do you know this? Do you follow this nature photographer? Do you follow that nature photographer?" And I hadn't, because it was all so new to me. I'd been a travel photographer who. Croatia, old buildings, the occasional mountain or volcano or shell on a beach in, Vanuatu. But up until then, I just didn't know. And I came away from that trip wanting to learn so much more. So for people that are thinking about going to these places, even if you feel like you have a good idea, do your homework, do lots of homework, and have a look online, Instagram, all those sort of social networking platforms. There is so much there that sort of makes you so you don't get a shock as to when you, like, I landed on a dirt airstrip. I didn't know I was going to land on a dirt airstrip. So it's just one of those things. You can go in clueless, and
That's great. So
do your homework.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about while we're here? We've got a few more minutes. So
well, when I as of late, I have been posting on social media, and I have been doing a little bit of a blog as well. And I feel that when I do my photographs, I like them to link to some sort of a blog about environmental issues, about animals or birds in general, a little bit of background about the creature. Sometimes I talk about the impact that humans have on creatures. I feel that if I am going to put up this lovely photograph of a bird, or I'm going to put up a photograph of a creature that's endangered, I think people need to know that. I feel that we as a human race have a lot to answer for, and I think that generations coming up now are really aware of that and conscious, and are starting to make good choices. But for some of our creatures, that's almost too late. So I sometimes go to Centennial Park and I photograph the bats, and the bats come down and have a drink. They use their sonar to come down and have a drink. So they skim along the water and they collect the water on their tummies, and then they take off and they drink the splashing, the little drips of water from their tummies. And it's beautiful and amazing to see. And a lot of people at night would see the bats flying around in the sky and not really knowing what they're doing. But sometimes bats, they can't tell the difference between a rooftop and a pond, or a pool of water, or a pool in the backyard. So, that's one thing that we have impacted. The building of buildings and the swelling of cities, and where do the echidnas go? Where do the kangaroos go? So I feel that sometimes I just need to get myself out there, and sometimes I put in a few of the swear words. I sometimes talk about birds and what they eat, and once again the impact of chopping down trees. I mean, I've been blogging quite a little bit about my local wetlands. I'm a big believer about these before COVID and after COVID stories, but during COVID, I had a very small sliver of space that I was locked in because I live near water, and when I have a 5-kilometre radius, I couldn't walk on the water, and then I'm near the airport, so the airport took up some of my space. So I had this tiny little area, and I've discovered a wetlands, and I was there every day. And that's where I think I got my love of bird photography, because when I started there, I had no idea what kind of birds I was looking at. And I've got a good friend, and I'd be taking photos and sending and saying, can you tell me what bird this is? So I spent every day there. Up until recently, but now our wetlands are some of it's been bulldozed away for synthetic football fields. So and it just breaks my heart that these sort of things happen. So on my Instagram, I'm a big one of sort of sharing that impact that we have.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because people, well, if you don't know it's there, you don't know you've just lost it. And I think the more awareness, I think particularly photographers, because we're giving people pictures of what's there, we're showing them. It's one of the big things we can try and do, at least, to influence public opinion and protect more and more of the the nature that we have around us, because it's all amazing. I one of the things for me from COVID was actually, if you can't get out, if you want to get out, if you're feeling really trapped and you're not connecting, to be able to connect with nature is so good for your mental health. And in a lot of, I mean, Sydney's amazing with the wildlife in Sydney, and a lot of other cities. Whoever's listening, hopefully there are areas of wildlife where you live, but we really need to protect them. And I think we actively need to protect them, because if we assume somebody else is going to do it, then nobody does it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think that I really like when I put things up and someone will message me, or they'll say something like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Thanks for that." Because I am also a teacher as well. So a little part of me wants to impart some information. And I feel that nature gives us so much, and I'd like to give something back to nature. Even if it's that little bit that says, somebody, when you're walking out and about, you're going to see this caterpillar. This caterpillar is going to feed a species of creature that's going to feed a bird, which is, there's a law, and there's a sequence to these events. And I think that some people just travel through life and, as you say, somebody else will fix it, or somebody else will solve it. And I think it's important for us all to just be aware and open our eyes. And I think that that's one thing that nature photographers are really good at. Actually, we're really good at, and I think it's our role as well.
Yeah. I think so too. And I think for people wanting to do something, you don't have to quit your job and do all sorts, just do something small. And I remember going back to the 80s, a success story of conservation, which was the ozone layer. Anyone around in the 80s, and CFCs and aerosols and all of that. I remember people saying, well, what difference does it make if I use an aerosol can? It's just me and I won't make any difference. But it comes down to, do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? And that's the choice that we can all make every day. And it doesn't have to be in a big way, but just if we're all doing it in a small way, as a whole, we all move forward. And I think this is probably an important thing for people to understand too. Just do your little bit that you can. And if we're all doing that, it becomes a big change, and that's really what we need.
Absolutely. And I think that nature does fix itself a little bit if we don't hurt it too much. And I've actually got a photo on my Instagram, and it was down at my special wetlands that I go to, and for months and months there's a water bottle, one of those big water bottles that you'd put onto a water cooler thing.
Yeah.
And it had been floating around for ages and ages. And I was sitting there on the little peninsula watching it, and it's in the reeds and it moves around. And the birds were just moving around it as if it's just meant to be there. They're so used to seeing it that it's just becomes part of their day. Yet the minute I step anywhere near the edge of that pond, their heads go up. There's something new. There's someone there. So, and rightfully so, because I could be a dangerous person or someone that's going to hurt them. But they are so used to seeing this bit of rubbish, it's just become part of their world.
Yeah. I'm going to, I suppose, wind things up, but I was just thinking, for anybody who wants to see your work, I'm going to put your Instagram link in the description for that is with the podcast. I don't have your website. What's your website, or do you have a website?
I don't have it's one of those things. And yes, I did quit my job. I was one of these people that quit my job, and I've got these list of things that I need to do in my world, but I'm so busy. I go out and shoot thousands of photos, and it takes me days to edit, and I think, I'll do something.
Sarah, I've just... Okay,
there's not much there though.
Sorry, you dropped out there. I've killed my video, which is why my face is gone, and it's probably the bandwidth at my end. But I lost a little bit of you there. So
okay.
So anyone who's interested in listening to your blog, where can they listen to your blog?
My Instagram. So I've just
Via
got
Instagram.
yes,
Okay.
Sara Corlis photography. I blog underneath my photographs.
Okay. All right. Well, look, that's fantastic. I'm going to wind things up, but I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope people have enjoyed listening. If anyone listening has any questions for Sarah, just drop me a line, and I'll pass the questions on. So I'm at Graham at ge.photography. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was my very first one, and I was very excited. So thank you so much, Graham. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And as I said in the recording, you can pass on any questions for Sara via my email, graham@ge.photography. And the link to Sara's Instagram is in the podcast description. And I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.